Thanks very much, Alan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barry Colfer. I'm the Director of Research here at the Institute. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to our discussion today with Esther Lynch, who's the General Secretary of the European Trade Union Federation. And Esther is going to be speaking about reclaiming Europe's promise, the quality jobs agenda, and the next social contract. ETUC represents about 45 million members, from 94 national trade union confederations from 42 countries and 10 European federations. So through its work and its influence, ETUC has affected all our lives and continues to have an enormous impact on life in Europe. So it's a real pleasure to have the General Secretary speaking to us today. Before Esther's role as General Secretary, indeed, I can see the room here. I think the majority of the people in the room here will know Esther from old, because before General Secretary, she was the Deputy General Secretary at ETUC, and before that was a Confederal Secretary, and she has extensive trade union experience at Irish, European, and international levels. Starting with her election as a shop steward in the 80s, but prior to arriving at the ETUC, we were very fortunate that Esther was the Legislation and Social Affairs Officer here in Ireland with the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, where she took part in negotiations on Ireland's national social partnership agreements. As Deputy General Secretary and Confederal Secretary, Esther led successful actions aimed at improving workers' and trade union rights and legislative initiatives, such as the Directive on Adequate Minimum Wages, the Transparent and Predictable Working Conditions Directive, and the Whistleblowing Directive. And Esther was always a big help to me in my career as a student and as a researcher, and in my current role as well. So it's just really nice to have Esther. Esther's obviously an enormous figure in the European trade union movement, but Esther's also really good fun and really sound. So very happy to have you here. For those of you who attend our events, I think you know the drill at this stage. I'm going to invite Esther in a moment to speak for about 20 minutes or so. There'll be an opportunity afterwards then for questions and answers. Those who are here in the room in full Technicolor in North Georgia Street, just raise your hand and a mic will come to you. And in these, hello to those joining at home. You'll be able to participate through the Q&A function on Zoom. The discussion today is on the record, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So without further ado, over to you, Esther.
Thanks, Barry, and thanks to the IIEA. Really good to be here in Dublin. Really good to be here with people interested in the future of Europe. Your role, in particular, discussing that, putting Europe and the idea of European solutions has never been more important. And I'm very happy to be able to bring the voice of working people to your considerations about the role and future of Europe. I think, to begin, we have to acknowledge the current situation, that many working people feel that something fundamental has shifted, that the deal that once held us all together, that you go to work, and if you went to work, you'd have dignity and security, a pension, and you'd be able to look forward to a future in which your children would do better than you would do, is largely been broken. Working people give their best every day, have kept Europe going through crisis after crisis, but they see their wages falling behind, and at the same time, they see profits and dividends soar. They see their rents, their bills, their shopping bills increase, but not their wages. They see often now their rights being described as obstacles to competitiveness. And for the first time in generations, young people are worse off than their parents. Across the EU, more than a quarter of people under 30 are in insecure and temporary jobs. I was talking to an engineer at the weekend, and she told me that she's on her 5th contract in 3 years. And even though she earns an average wage, she lives in Madrid, she can't afford a flat, can't afford to move out, can't afford to establish the life that she wants to for herself. We also know that young workers are at risk of poverty, and much more in the past decade than ever before. The generation's been told that education is the key to security, but we know that even highly qualified people find it difficult to find secure employment. Then when you look at the price of housing on top of this, throughout Europe, house prices are taking more than 60% of working people's average wage. And in 3 cities, it's more than 100% of the minimum wage. You literally can't afford, even from a week's work, to rent a 1-bedroom flat. And pensioners also feeling the squeeze. In 2023, 1 in 6 pensioners were at risk of poverty, and with many people with pensions less than 40% of their late career earnings. So we can't defend a social contract that isn't working for either the young or the old. That's a broken social contract. Um, and when the social contract isn't fair, then people begin to worry about democracy, begin to believe that the whole thing isn't working. So we need to have a solution that working people can believe in. And that's why the ETUC is calling for a new social contract, one that will address the current problems of working people, but also will give enough preparedness for the future. So that's the new social contract that the ETUC has been calling for. And it chimes, I think, quite well with the President of the European Union, who said in her State of the Union speech this year that she believes that Europe is in the fight for its future. And the question really is, what will the social contract be in the future? What will be the nature of it? What will it guarantee to who? And who will be asked to do what? I was reading over the holidays Michael Sandel's book, The Tyranny of Merit. I don't know if you had it yet. So he's absolutely, he makes the point really, really clearly, as he always does. But he said that the idea of us believing that personal success is some kind of a personal virtue, and you did it all on your own, and that anything else is some class of a personal failure, that is a highly problematic idea. And the American dream, which is kind of like a winner takes all approach, again, that's highly problematic. And it's not what we want to have as our social contract for the future. But we want us a social contract for the future to take more of what, to be more rooted in the ideas of the European social model. The idea that solidarity between people, between generations, between regions, between men, between women, the idea of solidarity between us all, the idea of rights, the idea of those with the most paying more. That idea is what we want the social contract to be built on. And yesterday at the Tripartite Social Summit, we brought 2 key ideas to develop that. The first of those was to have the quality jobs roadmap and some of the content of that. And the second of those was to say we need investment. So I'd like to outline a bit about, first of those, the Quality Jobs Act. Now, we're hoping for a Quality Jobs roadmap, of which the Quality Jobs Act is a part. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing then, because we've noticed that everybody's saying, well, what's a quality job? So the first of those is to set out, for the ETUC, a quality job has the following characteristics. The first of which is that it has a fair wage on which you can live on. That has to be the first one, because if you can't afford to live on it, then it's going to fail the quality jobs test. The second thing is that it's a secure job with a stable contract and hours, and that you have protection against dismissal. So it needs to be a job that you can predict what's going to happen next. Then thirdly, we have to have collective bargaining and union representation. A quality job can't fail an International Labour Organization decent work standard. So the International Labour Organization says a determinant of a decent job is one where you have the right to collective bargaining recognized. So a quality job can't be less than that. Also needs to have safe and healthy working conditions, including protection from psychosocial risks, and I'll say a bit about that, because burnout and ethical stress are becoming one of the crises in our labour markets in Europe. It also has to have the right to training and career development so that your skills keep pace with the speeded up change. It needs to have work-life balance with time for family, rest and participation. And finally, it needs to have equality, where everyone, no matter who they are, where they're from, who they love, young or old, we all have the same rights and equal opportunity and protection from discrimination at work. So in short, a quality job is one that lets a worker plan a life, raise a family and retire with dignity. It's as simple and as complicated as that. So for us, we need then the Quality Jobs Act to deliver measures which will guarantee the achievement of those key objectives. In particular, what we're looking for is the, sorry, just want to skip through that. Let's start with collective bargaining. So on collective bargaining, we see that the Quality Jobs Act needs to guarantee that each of the changes, the transitions, for example, the transformations, are done with the right to anticipation and management of change through your trade union. Trade unions need to have the information so that workers can negotiate fairly. And we know that where collective bargaining is strong, wages are fairer, inequality is lower, gender gaps are smaller, and productivity grows faster. It's not a coincidence, it's cause and effect. And that was why we brought the EU Directive on Adequate Minimum Wages forward, the ideas behind that. And we're very much calling on governments, regardless of what happens in the court case, to stay the pace, to make sure to meet the target of 80% of workers covered by a collective agreement. That's how we will build a competitive advantage in Europe. Then the just transitions for a fair Europe. We need to decarbonise, but we need to do that without deindustrialising. Across Europe, we've seen millions of jobs lost because the transition hasn't been managed well. What we need is quality jobs in every sector, in every region. Yesterday at the Tripartite Social Summit, we called for two things. The first of those, social partner foresight task force to be established at EU level. The purpose of that, we've won the argument that we need to have a European industrial policy. What we need now is that industrial policy to be developed with the social partners, including at European level. We need to understand what the new industries are, what the new jobs are. But then, and this is the second demand, we need a pact for investment so that we can bring the financial supports to companies so that they can make the transitions, not just in times of crisis, but also to have planned and managed change. And that needs to have, if you can imagine that we have a collective agreement with a company, that you'll be able to draw down the money for the training, that the training, the courses will be provided for the workers, and then everybody can make the transition fairly so that we make the idea of the just transition real again. And the same principle applies to technology, because artificial intelligence and automation are transforming the world we work. Every workplace needs an AI policy and an AI agreement. But we also need to make sure that the AI rules strengthen the campaign to have good quality jobs in Europe. So we need to make sure that workers have a voice and a say through their trade unions on how the digital tools are introduced, how they're used, and who uses them. And that's why one of the major disappointments I had was the withdrawal of the proposal for an AI Liability Act, because the AI Liability Act would have prevented the possibility that in AI, the first person who'd end up being blamed would be the manager or the person who is responsible. So we're very, very disappointed that the Liability Act was withdrawn. However, we do intend within the Quality Jobs Act to bring proposals to make sure that where AI is being used, that it's not the worker who's responsible when the AI hallucinates or does something, or where the workers follow the directions from AI. We also need to make sure that AI doesn't add to already existing difficulties. So, for example, if a hospital uses AI to plan staff schedules, the workers need to be involved in that planning so that the AI doesn't increase the burnout. We need to make sure that it's a tool for improvement and to create quality jobs, not as yet another determinant in speeding up work. Then on health and safety, we also want a strong health and safety module within the Quality Jobs Act. What we want to see there in particular is action to address the epidemic of stress at work in Europe, whether it's young workers or older workers. What we're hearing from workers throughout Europe is that there's burnout, excessive workloads, harassment and violence in the world of work has just increased. So in particular, we're looking to have the psychosocial risks treated in the same manner as the physical risks. And one of the examples of the type of stress that we want to be able to deal with is what we're calling ethical stress, but I'm not sure that's the right term for it. If I can give an example of it, if you can imagine a teacher in a large classroom, you have a struggling student who needs help, but the teacher doesn't have the time to spend with the struggling student just because of the size of the class. Or if you can imagine a nurse wants to spend time with a concerned patient, but doesn't have the time to be able to do that. But even I heard an example of a bus driver, and he said to me, I drive the bus every day. The same people more or less get on the bus every single day. And sometimes people are a little bit late. And in the past, I was able to hold the bus and wait for them to get on the bus. But now, because of the minute management of the bus, I have to just go. And then the person sees me yesterday and said, "Why did you not wait for me?" And so this stress of not being able to do your job, of not being able to show up as a human at work, and then the destruction of relationships that comes with that. And then also journalists, the same, not being allowed to do the type of research and preparation that they would expect to do. This type of stress we need to be able to deal with as a psychosocial risk created by the way in which work is organized, to be able to put it on the table. So we're very much hopeful that will also be included in the Quality Jobs Act. So in a nutshell, what do we want to see in the Quality Jobs Act? Right. So what we want to see are all of the determinants of a quality job capable of being included. We also want to see a provision dealing with extreme exploitation at work, whether it's through the use of gangmasters. I went to Italy to just about 10 minutes off the motorway. And about 10 minutes off the motorway, there's something called a shanty town. I don't even know if that's not to be insulting to the people who are forced to live there. They live under pieces of black plastic, 2,000 at the smallest, 12,000 at the biggest people, no toilets. The gangmasters put them there. They charge them for water. They charge them when they pick them up for work. Like it's in Europe. So we need to make sure that the extreme exploitation of these examples is also stamped out once and for all time. And we need to make that type of activity a crime. It can't be treated as something that's capable of being dealt with by a small fine. This needs to be treated exactly what it is, which is a crime. So we're also looking to have wage theft a crime, but also to have that type of extreme exploitation to be a crime. We're also looking to have a limit in the subcontracting chain, because what we have learned throughout Europe is one of the problems of the single market has been the growth of very long subcontracting chains. So we want to limit the subcontracting, taken for example, construction. We want to have the subcontracting chain limited to 2 down. And indeed, the Paris Metro is today being built on contracts that are no further than 2 subcontracting chain down. Now, if you can build something as complicated as the Paris Metro with an agreement to have a subcontracting chain of 2, you can build anything with that. So we also want to do that. Then finally, because I've got lots of things I want to say, but I want to leave time for questions. Finally, on the Gender Pay Transparency Directive, want to be very clear that the attempts by Donald Trump and his administration to undermine European equality by his letter on the diversity, equality and inclusion measures, we've been very clear with his ambassador to the EU that this is unacceptable, it's illegal, and it does nothing whatsoever to improve the merit-based principle that he was trying to pretend was being undermined by this. But anyway, it's also against the EU treaty. So it's simply not possible for member states or for companies to say we won't respect and have equality. The other thing that's in the EU treaty and indeed in the European Pillar of Social Rights is the idea of equal pay for work of equal value. And I'm looking around here and I know lots of people have been engaged for many years in taking cases and in establishing a lot of EU law on the hypothetical comparator. So that idea was incorporated in the Gender Pay Transparency Directive. And the value of that was, in particular, I'm thinking about carers and cleaners. So carers and cleaners do highly skilled work, but it's called low skilled work. They literally do life and death work. We learnt that during the COVID crisis, literally the difference between living and dying, and we're calling it low skilled work. So we need to make sure that we no longer do that. So that was why in the Gender Pay Transparency Directive, we have the provision which allows and supports trade unions to ask for information from the employer. Why do you put that value? Why is it that you actually put the value of that on that particular job, so that we can begin to address once and for all the undervaluing of work simply because it's predominantly done by women. So the Gender Pay Transparency Directive, the ETUC, we will defend that particular provision because it was all about responding to the people who did so much during the COVID crisis to make sure that their real skill, which was demonstrated at that time, is also properly respected now. So, in a nutshell, Quality Jobs Roadmap, Quality Jobs Act, an investment programme for the just transitions. That's how we restore faith in the European Union being able to respond to the needs of working people. That's how we renew Europe. That's how we turn problems into solutions that can be supported by the EU. And together in the trade unions in Europe, we have this plan, and we're at the beginning of this process now. We've won the argument on the needs for legislation for quality jobs. We've won the argument on the need for investment. Now, this next part is for us to make sure that the content of that act delivers that set of determinants of a quality job. Thank you.